What about babies? You guys got any babies?
One of the things I noticed upon finishing Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was that this was, in fact, low-key, one of the best RPGs released this generation, if not the best. Now, obviously, there are huge heavy hitters like Pokemon, Fire Emblem, but when you really get down to it, I think when it comes to like the pure traditional JRPG experience, nothing beats Xenoblade. I got in depth talking about this a little bit, but when you really get down to it, there's all sorts of manner of reasons. The gameplay, the world, the setting, the themes, the stories, the ideas, the characters, all of it comes together to produce an absolute masterclass. Something that wouldn't be out of place in the PS1 era. Something that really challenges the player and really takes you on a ride with its crazy concepts and ideas. Now, I've talked about the aspects that relate specifically to the RPG genre. You know, I've explained why Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is better than Baldur's Gate 3. I've explained why it's better than Elden Ring. I've explained why it's better than, every other piece of slop that's come out on every other console this console generation. I've explained why it's such a masterpiece. But one of the things that really stuck out to me playing this game and really diving deep into the lore and the characters and the setting and a lot of things that really stick out to me about this. The biggest thing out of all of them is that this game is unbelievably red-pilled. And not necessarily in the shallow Grums way, where like, oh, look at all the pretty ladies. Oh, that's all I care about. Oh, one pretty lady at the time. Oh, I love Stellar Blight. Oh, like, Black Myth Wukong is banned because Game Journals can't handle how sexy it is. Oh, like, no. I'm talking about being red-pilled in the purest sense, where it depicts actual values, it showcases characters undergoing their journey and understanding what's really important in life and understanding the reality of the world. Now, in the base game, this involves the characters undergoing this journey that leads them down a path of forbidden knowledge that people from their civilization is not meant to know. In the world of Ionios, Agnes and Kevis are clones built specifically to wage war against each other forever in order to keep the cycle going in perpetuity, right? The endless now, as it's referred to. What this ends up meaning is that Agnes and Kevis don't know anything about sex. They don't know anything about the traditional family structure. They don't know how humans are supposed to reproduce. All they know is the cloning system that's just their normal everyday routine. A big part of Xenoblade Chronicles 3's plot is these characters undergoing this realization as to how important having kids actually is, how it's important to work towards the future, and this idea of living this eternity with the people you love and care about at the expense of other people is in and of itself not worth it. This is N's entire character arc, actually. This idea that he had everything he ever wanted, an eternity to bang his hot cat girl GF forever, and in the end, it just ended up blowing up in his face. In the end, the people that he subjugated and ruined for his own gain managed to get the better of him, and the entire world collapsed to merge once again and to become their own separate things. Now, that's the base game. Okay, the entire base game is about the importance of family and understanding how essential society is and how important it is to contribute to it and to find your place in the world and how you can't really do anything to escape it. Even under this crazy hypothetical idea of like, well, what if I live forever, bro? Like, not gonna happen, right? This game directly is opposed to the typical blue-pilled nonsense of this idea that, that utopia is possible if we only divide everything among ourselves equally, man, and stuff like that. This game really does a fantastic job exposing the reality of nature and just how even when this hypothetical scenario in which children can be like mass produced endlessly forever, how people would choose to start families, how they would understand how normal that is, and they would reject the world that was created for them. This is really interesting to see. A really interesting take on the idea, one that I really applaud the developers for, but it also tackles this subject in really interesting ways that I think other, specifically Western developers, would never dare tackle. It actually makes two major characters from the previous games fathers. And not only are they fathers, they're very good fathers who are involved in the lives of their kids and want to see the best of them. Even if they struggle sometimes, even if there's some big divide between them, even if they don't necessarily know, they are at least there, they're present, and they do something about it. That's right, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, of all video games, is the game to buck this idea that, like, JRPG protagonists don't have fathers. For those of you who haven't noticed this, there has been this extreme push among feminized organizations to push this idea that a father isn't necessary and that we need to depict characters, especially female characters, as not needing them around and how they don't do any good and how they just cause problems and stuff like that. No, the reality is that people need both of their parents, male and female. Mom and dad, they need to be there. And this is a game that really demonstrates how important that is in very meaningful, subtle ways. They do so very effectively across a variety of different characters through subquests and even the DLC, especially the DLC. They tend to emphasize this point, and they do it so much and so well. I kind of had this realization when I was playing Future Redeemed that this game does a way better job at handling the parent dynamic than The Last of Us or God of War ever did. Right? When you look at those games and you compare that to what this game does, the PlayStation method is to kind of fetishize the relationship, right? Is to make Joel look out to be some tragic figure who lost his daughter to zombies and as a result latches onto Ellie and tries using her as a surrogate, and how he is going to sacrifice humanity for her. It's try-hard, right? It's not a well-told story. It's not engaging. It's not interesting. It doesn't really... It's a generic zombie movie plot, right? There's nothing cool or interesting about Joel and Ellie's relationship. The only reason people hyped it up the way they did was because game journos told you to. When you take that away from it, when you actually look at their relationship objectively, like how it's actually portrayed, you find this very basic, very uninspired, very generic relationship that really comes off as if it could have come off as like X-Men fan fiction. Okay, this is something that belongs in a comic book. It's straight up slop. It doesn't stand up to any real film that tackles the same subject way more effectively. It doesn't stand up to games like Yakuza, which do a way better job of handling this kind of thing. It doesn't stand up to other video games. And it certainly doesn't stand up to Xenoblade Chronicles 3. The real reason you're protecting a little girl in The Last of Us is to emotionally manipulate you into thinking what you're doing in that game is important, right? Like, oh, this is the future. Ellie could save all of humanity. Like, it doesn't... They're essentially not even really characters. They're props to get a reaction out of the audience for shock value. They are low effort, bland, milquetoast, just generic, vanilla zombie movie characters. There is nothing more to either of them than that. But when you compare it to Xenoblade Chronicles 3, when you look at how certain characters treat their children, when you get to know both of them and see the dynamic from both points, when you do these quests over and over and over again, and you get to see them in all these different situations, and you see that although someone like, say, Gondor and Monica have issues with each other as mother and daughter, they still really care about each other a lot, even though they have irrevocable differences that are putting them apart. And Monica even says as much, like she doesn't get along with Gondor at all, but at the same time, the relationship between parent and child is not ideal. Right? We want to get along with our kids. We want to get along with our parents, but there are times and places where that's not really possible. When you really look at Xenoblade Chronicles 3, you see characters having different opinions. You see characters going different paths in life. You see characters, directly opposing the will of their parents. And that just is so much more than what The Last of Us or God of War 2018 manages to accomplish. It's so much better than what the PlayStation Nation puts out. This is a masterfully told story that handles this theme extraordinarily well. So well, in fact, that I really can't think of anything else that does it better. This is the game that The Last of Us wishes it was.